Well, hello, our fellow friends, our fellow neighbors, and our fellow shining stars. Our next trolley stop is here, and our next trolley stop is now. Welcome back to another all-new episode of PR from the Heart's children's book spotlight series. To be precise, we have reached episode number 164. That is the 164th trolley stop at the Children's Book Spotlight Series as part of our holiday season celebration at PR from the Heart. My name is John Massalonis, the manager here at PR from the Heart, the host of the Children's Book Spotlight Series. And of course, before we even start things off, because we are ready to usher in the final month of 2022, where has this year gone? I was almost going to say 2023, but that's almost just around the corner. Let me officially introduce all of you, listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and our fellow shining stars, to the newest member of the PR from the Heart family. This is Little Forrest. So, of course, if you've been with us for a short period of time, or if you've traveled a long distance with us over the past several years, we never travel alone at PR from the Heart. We never travel alone here at the Children's Book Spotlight Series. So you may hear Little Forrest here and there. You may see Little Forrest here and there in the process. So this is his big time debut. Now, wouldn't it be something if you saw a little animated version of Little Forrest on Doug Unplugged, right? You know, that'll be another conversation for another time. But I am super excited to be able to join all of you wherever you are and wherever you may be, because today we are going to be talking about the importance of enjoying one another's company. Now, raise your hand if you like enjoying your own company. Sometimes, you might say, well, I really don't like spending quality time with myself. Well, it's long since been said that in order to be able to enjoy the quality time with other people, you have to enjoy the quality time that you have with yourself, because how does the expression go? That you always spend the most time with yourself, so you might as well get used to it. So in the process, then you can, again, have treasured memories and moments with your family members, with your friends, with your loved ones, especially this holiday season and beyond. And another thread that we're going to be talking about here on the Children's Book Spotlight Series this week is the importance of thinking for yourself. There's a lot of times when we get the good-natured opinions of our fellow neighbors, and a lot of the times it can definitely help in the process, but it's really about trusting our intuition. And so there's so many different things that we're going to be talking about. Little Forrest is super excited because anytime that we bring one of our favorite neighbors here back aboard the Children's Book Spotlight Series, we like to call them, these are Yaccarino-sized Children's Book Spotlight Series episodes. So when something is like a certain size, it's small, medium, large, extra large. Maybe if you're like a little bit of a bigger gentleman, you go to the, to the big and tall section at JCPenney's, right? Well, we've got the Yaccarino size versions of the Children's Book Spotlight Series. We encourage all of you, our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and of course I guess we'll hold up the shining star. The shining star represents Little Forrest, to head on over to Amazon.com if that is your preferred online vehicle of your choosing. You can also head on to your favorite independent children's bookstore or your favorite big box store. Likely it's there in the process as well too, or the official website of Dan Yaccarino, which we've included in the description below, the brand new release courtesy of our friends and neighbors at Mine Edition. And it's interesting, whenever I think of Mine Edition, and especially whenever I think of Dan's newest release, which is now available, City Under the City, I automatically think of Tetris. Raise your hand if you're a child of the 80s and you remember Tetris on your end of things, right? So the newest release from one of our favorite neighbors, he is an award-winning and best-selling children's author and illustrator. The trolley travels cross-country. Little Forrest, are you excited? Because we get to travel cross-country. That's right. We are heading out from San Diego, California, over to one of the cities that really is always rocking and rolling during the holiday season, New York City. Dan Yaccarino spending some quality time with myself and Little Forrest here in our neighborhood at the Children's Book Spotlight Series. You get the first bird's eye glimpse of Little Forrest, albeit from afar. Happy holidays to you and your family. I hope that you and your loved ones had a wonderful Thanksgiving. So good to have you back aboard the program.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure, John. I always love coming to visit you guys. And now Little Forrest. Let's take a peek.
Yep, there he is.
Oh, cute.
It's like, look how cute he is. He is a little squirmy. He's a little squirmy at times, so to speak, because this is, he's probably, just a little bit, well, he's really not camera shy, so to speak. He definitely loves loves the attention, so to speak. So if you are already in a festive mood just by Little Forest's presence and Dan's presence and my presence, if these messages that we are already communicating with you about the importance of thinking for yourself and enjoying one another's company, especially around the holiday season, if you haven't had the opportunities to do so, one of the many ways that you can pledge your support for Dan, for us here at PR from the Heart, and the Children's Book Spotlight series is to subscribe to PR from the Heart's official YouTube channel and to share this very special trolley stop that you are now enjoying. That is episode number 164 of the Children's Book Spotlight series. So much has happened over the course of this past year since we last connected, which by the way, again, congratulations to you, because last year the longest storm was, of course, a part of PR from the Heart's top 10 empowering reads of 2022. So the momentum is continuing, and we were just talking about this in the PR from the Heart green room, which I always go back to that example that, like, you know, whenever you're a big rock star, you always have those things that are in your contract riders. Like there's the scene in the classic movie Wayne's World where the roadie says, well, you know, Ozzy wouldn't go on stage if he didn't have brown or green M&Ms that evening, so to speak. So much has happened over the course of this past year. Could you just give us a little bit of an insider's perspective as to how this year has been for you, shifting and transitioning from the longest storm to City Under the City? And now, as we've also discussed and communicated, author visits are back, illustrator visits are back, being able to go to book fairs and book festivals and not the two squares on a screen, right? To be able to actually connect with children, parents, families, educators, as we like to say, those who love great children's books. What has all of this been like for you over this past year?
Well, it began pretty much the way 2 years prior began, and it was kind of quiet. Everything I was doing was virtual, and you start to get used to it. But then, as I mentioned, John, about a week or so ago, I did a series of school visits in person, and this sort of all came back to me. And I remembered the give and take that goes on when you're speaking to a large group, especially with kids. And I realized at that moment how much I missed it. And it's exhilarating, and at the end of the day, you know, really exhausting, but it's a sort of a good kind of tired. And I really felt like, you know, we had, you know, some special time together. And it's very different than a virtual visit because, you know, a lot of times I can't see the people I'm talking to. I can't hear their reaction. But when you're in front of, you know, a whole crowd of kids and they're so excited because they're back in school, this is probably maybe one of the few, you know, assemblies that they've had this year. And it's just a wonderful feeling and a wonderful experience. And I always love connecting with the audience, and they give me feedback. And I cherish that feedback. I really take it to heart. So
I think that brings up a very well-known 80s song, "Don't Know What You Got Till It's Gone," as the expression goes. And you know, cue the 80s hair bands here. There obviously was a point in time, we knew that we would be getting to the other side of things, but just, you know, connecting with especially now more of your peers as well too. I believe that in New York City, they had a very big gala, so all the top children's illustrators from around the world were actually there. Could you share with us, before we start to talk a little bit more about City Under the City, what it was like for you to be able to have that experience? Because there, you know, here we are, we're talking about enjoying each other's company as part of episode number 140 or 164 of the Children's Book Spotlight series. And you had the opportunities to enjoy the company of a lot of your trusted friends and colleagues and fellow neighbors.
Yes, it was the first Society of Illustrators exhibit, I think, in at least 2, maybe not 3 years. And a piece from the new book got in, which was thrilling. And it was like old home week, you know. I have been doing, next year I will have been creating children's books for 30 years. So yeah, it's a long time.
Big wow.
Yeah, big wow. And a lot of these people, it was funny, I was talking to an art director who I've known since maybe my second book. And it was almost like we grew up together in this business. And it was just so wonderful and heartening to see all these old friends and other people that I'm, respected, people like, that I've only heard about online or seen their work online. You finally get to meet some people like, I am such a fan of your work, and it's just so gratifying to be in like a big group, and all these people share history together.
Mm.
It's just so wonderful. And everybody's, sort of, we're all wearing masks, but we're all hugging each other and reminiscing and, promising to get together. And it was just such a wonderful, again, exhilarating, kind of exhausting at the end of the day, but it was wonderful, I have to say.
I'm so glad because, again, having conversations with, many of our fellow friends and neighbors and colleagues in the Kidlit community, it's just, again, we knew that we'd come to this particular point in time. We knew that we would get there. And in our own unique ways, individually and collectively, we moved through the longest storm. And now we're beginning to be on the other side and enjoying the fruits of our labor. To give us a little bit more of an insider's perspective, when you finish up one project and you move to the next, like, for all of those spiritual gurus that are out there or spiritual entrepreneurs, a lot of times when you go from one task, sometimes you might say a little bit of a blessing, or you might sage yourself or pray or clear your energy. So there's one way to move from one task to the next, so to speak. The Longest Storm did incredibly well, some of your best work. And then obviously when you knew that City Under the City was on deck, your next project, can you walk us through that process of what that was like for you? And just even overall, again, 30 years of now, being in the Kid Lit community, shifting from one project to the next. I was always curious about that question because, like, especially like, let's say if you're a football player, right? Like, how long do you relish and enjoy in the victory on Sunday before preparing for the big game the following Sunday?
Right. Well, the way that I work, and I'm sure a lot of my colleagues work in a similar fashion, is that we're working on a few projects in different phases at the same time. So if I'm doing finishes for one project, I'm probably refining sketches for another and probably doing very rough initial sketches for yet another project. But I always give myself, a little time to decompress after delivering the artwork, after delivering the revisions for the artwork, because you think it's over, and then you get, a bunch of notes, which are fine. They're all in support of the book to make it as good as possible and effective. So once that's done, I do give myself a little time to decompress and relax and enjoy the feeling that, I've accomplished something. I've created all this artwork. I created a world. I created characters. It's really, you have to sit and relish that every once in a while instead of just pushing the next, the last thing aside and going on to the next one. You really need to celebrate that. And this book, which I have right here, I had the idea probably about 20 years ago, and I had been sort of noodling with it for a while, but I didn't know what format it would be best served. So at one point I was thinking, picture book, but it was just such a large story. Then I started, veering into the idea of early reader. And then of course I'm completely intrigued with graphic novels. And so they all kind of dovetailed together. When I spoke to my editor, Maria Russo, at Mine Edition, she understood what I was going for. She was also my editor on The Longest Storm. So she, has some sort of ability to look into my head a little bit, my brain. And we just kept talking about it. And it was such a layered story about being okay, being by yourself, enjoying your own company, being part of a community. The driving force, there are a few, but one of the primary driving forces is about reading and how reading empowers people. And that, that was always there. It was always in every version that I wrote or thought about. And it really came forward in this, in the book now, in this version of it. And I'm very excited about it. It is by far the largest book I've ever done. There's over 125 illustrations in it. And it was, it was exciting, and then it was a little frustrating, and then it became exciting again. And I was just can't wait to work on the sequel now. I'm sort of working on the sequel at the moment, sort of just putting together some sketches. And I want to continue this story because I think it's an important story and I enjoy it so much. And the feedback that I've gotten so far has been very, very positive. Speaking to these kids at the schools, looking at some reviews online. So I think, it's being well received, and I'm really thrilled. I'm so happy that people get it. And the interesting thing is, every once in a while I'll speak to someone or I'll read a review online and I'm sure other authors and illustrators have said this to you, but sometimes people pick out things that you didn't realize you did. You kind of do it unconsciously, and then they find it and they look and they reflect it back to them like, I didn't realize I did that. But it shows this kind of flow that happens when we work. Not everything is logical, not everything is conscious. There's a certain level of inspiration that you allow yourself to be open to and have it flow into the work. And I think a lot of that happened with this new book.
Bix's journey in City Under the City, and of course, we will be diving inside the pages of City Under the City momentarily here. It's one of our favorite times here during each episode of the Children's Book Spotlight series. The story is very simplistic, yet it's very detailed at the same point. The overall arc of the story. I always love children's books that have different kinds of messages in them and they're intertwined, because it'd be very easy to just focus on the importance of the power of reading and just have that be as the number one thing and not have anything else. When you're putting a project together, whether it be you're illustrating a project, you're authoring a project, you're doing animation work on your end of things with Doug Unplugs, as you did previously with the Backyardigans and Oswald. How important is it for you to be able to have those different messages be able to blend together and to not have, even though if the overall arching message is the most important, to have things weave so it really tells a beautiful, multifaceted, multi-layered story?
Well, I consider who's reading the book, obviously. So you have your core audience. You have to serve them first.
Yep.
And however you do that, with text or images or the overall images. But then there are other layers to it that I love to put in there, and those lie in the details. So this book is full of tiny little details. And my goal was to have the readers read it a few times and examine it, because when I was a kid, I would, whatever books I would get out of the library or whatever, I would be there with, like a magnifying glass to look at this stuff. And I remember how fascinating it is. And it tells, it gives you an entirely different layer of the story. And so a lot of the Easter eggs in the book are referencing things that will happen in the future. In The Longest Storm, there was ambiguity in there in certain tiny elements, but it was on purpose. There was no clear answer for certain things. And I did that on purpose because I wanted to inspire conversation. I wanted the readers to have questions. I wanted them to project onto these sort of ambiguous areas what they would imagine those things were. And it becomes more of a, sort of an interaction between, instead of just, here's the book, I'm presenting it to you, that's it. It's on one layer and that's it. I really love the back and forth, that they're applying their own experience and their own lives to these sort of gray areas in both of the books. There's, like I said, there's tons in City Under the City.
There very much is. Again, we encourage all of you, our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and of course our fellow shining stars, to head on over to the official website of Dan Yaccarino, which is yaccarinostudio.com. If Amazon is your preferred online vehicle of your choosing, you can purchase your copy of City Under the City, which is now available courtesy of our friends and neighbors at Mine Edition. One of the many ways that you can pledge your support for Dan is to leave a 5-star review. Again, if Amazon is your preferred online vehicle of your choosing, if you feel guided to do so in the process, again, it's one of the many ways that you can pledge your support for Dan, to let him know that he's doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, those who love great children's books. Any of Dan's illustrated or authored children's books, great Christmas gifts as well too, great Hanukkah gifts, great Kwanzaa gifts, great Boxing Day gifts. And yes, I'm sure there's some holidays that are upcoming in the months of January and February, so to speak, heck, even perfect Easter egg, right? Literally and figuratively. So to speak.
Very good, John. I like that.
Put that inside the Easter basket. Diving inside the pages of City Under the City, it's interesting because growing up, one of my favorite cartoons was the Jetsons. And I kind of got like a little bit of like this like, Jetsons flair, so to speak, seeing, like the little, kind of energy that you would have in the Jetsons. But again, as I mentioned beforehand, a lot of, even though this is taking place in an imagined alternate future, there's a lot of real things that we experience today. So for example, quote unquote, kids no longer read books, they utilize small portable screens, right? And it's a matter of like most kids, not all, because they still feel that one of the greatest feelings that you can experience, whether you're a parent or a caregiver of a little one, is to actually sit down with your child, with your student, and actually read the book with them, not on a screen, not on an electronic device of some kind. And it's not the traditional children's book. It's, again, mixture of a few different layers, a few different descriptions kind of thing. It obviously has almost like a comic book flair to it as well too. So again, we always don't like to give away the whole kit and caboodle. Again, it's an old school expression here at the Children's Book Spotlights, but we definitely want our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and our fellow Shining Stars to enjoy Bix's journey. Could you describe Bix and his journey and what he actually learns and experiences in City Under the Sea, and really how this all weaves into the fact of enjoying each other's company, how he's really reminding us of that?
Right. Bix is a girl. Sorry. But she lives in a futuristic world with her family. And as you mentioned, everyone's on these little devices.
Yep.
There are these eyeballs that float around and help everyone. These kind of mechanical arms. They help. In the book, you can see them helping people brush their teeth and feeding them and dressing them and combing their hair and all this. But they also watch everyone. So they sort of are floating around everywhere in your home, outside, out in public. And she doesn't like it. She just is different from everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
She does not accept the status quo. And she's sort of, an oddball in this world where a lot of people are just sort of complying. And she discovers a whole nother world. I'm not giving anything away by telling you it's a city under her city.
Yep.
And it's a whole world where these things don't exist. Technology barely exists. And she discovers a whole new way of living. And it was really exciting for me to create this story. And I'm not going to give away the last third, so you're going to have to read the book. But it was really exciting because to me, this is probably the closest I've come to something epic, like a very broad-based story that has tons of characters in it, lots of details, as we mentioned. And she just is sort of a born leader. And that's all I'm going to say about the plot of the book.
Well, you're definitely leaving a lot of room open for little ones, especially, to be able to enjoy the story. I want to share some of my favorite passages from the book because I don't necessarily, I can't remember when was the first time that I had my first library experience growing up, but I remember we used to have these things called bookmobiles. So the Buffalo and Erie County Public Library would have the bookmobile, and they would come once a week, and it'd be this big truck of books in the parking lot. And I'm like, when you're a little kid, it's like, this is like the greatest thing since Swiss cheese kind of thing, right? And so there's the part in the book where, Bix learns, and there's all of these, books that are around her, and you see, different sorts of statues and a candlelight, the odds of reading by candlelight. Again, if you're an old soul, before you had electricity, you were actually reading by candlelight. And she realizes that there's this place called the library, and there's so much to be able to learn from and enjoy. She has a scintillating conversation with a rat. Again, this childlike innocence and wonder. That's something that I also really enjoyed about Bix's journey and the story. We live in a very, not entirely, but, the world wants us to be cynical and to be jaded and to be stressed and things of that nature. with Bix's journey, with City Under the City, why was it important for you to be able to connect your readers with that childlike innocence, so to speak, in the process with this particular story?
I think we underestimate kids a lot. And I find that a lot of adults are really surprised when their kids sort of really sink into books. And it's just a wonderful feeling. And I was hoping that the readers would, empathize and connect with her and her love of reading.
Mm.
And that was one of the goals. I mean, there's so much going on in this book, but that was one of my goals, is to sort of inspire, come along with this character. She gained strength from just reading, and that was, there's a small bit here, and I'm going to reference it. Hang on one sec. I'm sure you're showing, some of the images, but there's Frederick Douglass.
Yep.
Frederick Douglass's statue there, sort of just trying to visually present the concept of reading as power, reading as freedom, reading as strength. There's tons of stuff like that. If you look at the titles of the books, you look at all the tiny little details. That's the joy of doing something at this level, at this, I guess, age range level, is where you can do that. My younger books really need to serve directly, the younger audience. But this has nuance, it has details, it has subtleties to it. And the things that you don't quite understand will be answered in the next book, or hopefully the next book after that. So it was just thrilling to be able to think that far into the future. But the whole engine of it is reading. And that's what I was hoping to sort of, attract new readers through this book, through this character.
One of the things that I also really enjoyed about the book, and not to give away again any part of the whole kit and caboodle, so to speak, is that we see the importance of how, when we can move through different experiences and life situations, and then we realize that and I think that we really are still experiencing this right now coming out of the pandemic, is that we're truly coming together for what feels like the very first time. I think that's another 80s.
You're hitting them all today.
we are channeling our inner Casey Kasem here on the Children's Book Spotlight series. We're keeping our feet on the ground, and we're still reaching for the stars at the same point in time. Again, that's it's a beautiful way in which you leave off the story, so to speak, but it's a very, like, I can just imagine children being read this story at bedtime around the holidays. City Under the City, a little bit of a Christmas classic, shall we say, just based on that one thread alone. Like, here we are together again for the very first time. Talk to us a little bit about the message that you were conveying as you were wrapping up the story, but really what you want your readers, children, parents, families, those who enjoy the book, to actually connect with the feeling of that. It's not just, a real cute way to be able to wind down a children's book, even though it is, but to be able to connect with that sort of feeling, because, we've gone through a lot over the course of the past several years, and now we truly are able to enjoy one another's company for what seems like the very first time.
It's sort of an odd dovetail with what's happening with our culture and socially, and regarding the pandemic and the release of, sort of the timing of the release of this book. And it does feel like we're together again for the first time. I like that. But it's sort of the joy of other people's company. And I did a couple of days upstate New York and visited schools and spoke to librarians, spoke to a lot of kids. And it really was almost, even though I don't know any of these people, it was kind of like a homecoming in a weird way, to come back to being social and connected. And you discover how much you've been living without once you go back out there. And in the book, again, not giving too much away, but all of these members of this society, this futuristic society, who are essentially living together but separately, do come together in the end as a community. And these are all messages that have been running through most of my books. Even Doug Unplugs is about, not denying technology, but getting information, but from technology, and going out and learning through experience and learning through other people. So my goal is always about family, about community, about direct conversation with others, that I feel like we're gradually losing this. And so, being that they're kids' books, you get to inspire these kids at their early part of their lives, and hopefully they'll carry that message throughout their lives, because there's a lot of competition, with a lot of digital technology and things like that, that are sort of fighting against people coming together in person, reading, physically experiencing things. So I think these things must be on my mind, because they do make it into a lot of my books, a lot of my work. So, but I do believe in, strength in community, strength in education, strength in reading.
One of the phrases that really came to mind after enjoying City Under the City was a beautiful divine tapestry. A beautiful divine tapestry. And it's kind of interesting because, I always feel that, like, whenever you line up 10 readers, whether it be young or young at heart, you'll get different responses, different feedback. But it really just blends well. It's a very sweet story. Again, if you're a big space age futuristic kind of kid on your end of things, if you're like a lover of the Jetsons in your own way, if anything, you just like to be able to see a character that has a heart, that has emotions and feelings, and that really goes on such an incredible journey. I really love how you leave the way, as you said, open for, a sequel, a trifecta, so to speak. I still am the kind of guy, I might be one of the only guys that thinks that the Karate Kid Part 2 is better than the original Karate Kid. I know that for some people, especially all the Cobra Kai fans, that may seem like blasphemy, so to speak. So the question is, and we'll leave this up to you, our fellow friends, our fellow neighbors, and our fellow shining stars. Will the sequel to City Under the City, maybe it's Country Under the Country, so to speak, it's a cute title, will actually outdo its predecessor? We're beginning to wind down our time with our featured guest, award-winning and best-selling children's author and illustrator, the creative force behind Doug Unplugs on Apple TV, Dan Yaccarino. We are indeed we're fully immersed in the beautiful divine tapestry that is City Under the City. We encourage all of you to head on over to Dan's official website, yaccarinostudio.com. We've included that link in the description below. In addition to Amazon.com, if that is your preferred online vehicle of your choosing, you can leave a 5-star review, one of the many ways that you can pledge your support for Dan, to let him know that he's doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, for those who love great children's books, and for all school teachers, whether it be teachers, principals, librarians, superintendents. You can also connect with Dan V's official website to secure an in-person or virtual author school visit for 2023 as well. Dan will indeed put smiles on the faces of your little ones, in their minds, in their hearts, and most importantly, make sure that they are enjoying their 2023 and that it is off to such a wonderful start. Kind of diving a little bit deeper, because of course, these episodes of the Children's Book Spotlight Series, sometimes people have referred to them as cathartic experiences. Sometimes people refer to them as, like, it feels like I just finished up a Sunday sermon at my local church, kind of thing. When it talks about, your story talks about the importance of thinking for yourself. I know that this can seem like a very simple question, like, Dan, why is it important to think for yourself? But I think it's something that needs to be communicated, especially with our children, because little ones, I can remember growing up, I just wanted to fit in. I just wanted to be a part of the cool crowd. And so, I didn't think for myself for a long period of time. And even as an adult, I can still find myself, well, I want to fit in, and I want this person to like me and love me, kind of thing. So talk to us, if you could, the significance, why this is really paramount, especially for us as parents and caregivers of our little ones, to teach our children to be able to think for themselves and to honor their intuition.
I recall something I would say to both of my children when they were young. They're in their 20s right now. But I would say to them, you have to think for yourself, otherwise somebody's going to do it for you. And so, make a decision, that is based on what you want. Otherwise, it's going to be made for you by someone else, and it may not be what you want. And I think that we should encourage kids to think more as individuals. There's certain moments when we all should come together and, and agree. But there are other times when you could potentially lose your own personality, lose your own, individual spirit to the zeal of wanting to fit in. So I don't consider myself someone who fit in all that well in school. I was kind of a little to the left, because I drew, no one else drew. Didn't really play sports. I love to read, and that kind of made me a bit of an oddball, but it's okay because I nurtured this sort of singularness in my own self, and it does fuel my work. I think it does fuel my perspective on the world, and it all comes out in the comes out in the work. But I think it's okay if you're not completely accepted by everyone. You have to be you, and that's going to serve you even more as you get older, later in life, rather than being part of the collective. It's important sometimes to be part of that collective because there's strength in numbers, but there's also, I think, way more important, more time in your life when you need to be an individual and think for yourself. And that's what Bix does in the book against, all odds, against everyone around her. So she is kind of an oddball in that sense, but I'm not going to give anything away, but it turns out to be a very, very good thing for everyone.
Very true, and it's really a matter of a story of empowerment as well too. Just the acknowledgement and the belief, like, wow, like it's okay for me to be able to think for myself. It's okay for me to be able to enjoy whatever it is that I'm creating, which is just one of the things, like in all of your books that I've read, whether it be authored or illustrated, it always feels like you're enjoying. This is just a brief aside, that it always feels like you enjoy what it is that you're creating. To kind of have things come full circle, we're celebrating the holiday season, and it may look different for different people. So for some people, it's more of the immediate, mom, dad, brother, sister. For some people, it's more of spending time with in-laws. For some people, it might be just spending some quality time with some loved ones that are not by blood, so to speak. So obviously, however you decide to spend your holiday season, the important thing is that that you take the time to make it the best one possible. That's why this little guy is here with us here at PR from the Heart right now. Enjoying each other's company. What does that mean to Dan Yaccarino? Enjoying someone else's company.
When you're with someone, there's always something to either share or learn or benefit from in both directions. I cherish time with my close friends. They're in my life for a reason. They're people, everyone is in your life for some reason, teach you what to do, to support you, to teach you what not to do sometimes, as a cautionary tale. But I sort of I'm fairly conscious of that, and I do cherish my family, obviously, my children, my siblings, and my close friends. And just like 2 weeks ago, I realized how much I cherish my coworkers who I haven't seen in a very long time. So it's it's a joy, and it's a treat to be around people, who understand you and who love you. I have a lot of long standing friends. I am friends with some friends that I made back in elementary school. And so we've known each other for, I'm not even going to say how many decades, but I cherish them. They're like, they're like family members to me, like they're like brothers to me. And same goes for, friends that I've had for like 30 years. So I like to keep people in my life, who I admire and I respect, I love. And, it's important because we all need each other.
Yes.
And we're made to communicate. We're made to interact with other people. Like we're designed that way, and we should be doing it as often as possible with the right people.
We obviously were able to remember that more as the result of reading City Under the City. We sure as heck now know that as the result of moving through the pandemic experience. And even again, just a brief aside, like I really love how you utilize, you're a very busy guy. So when you post on social media, you really make an impact with whatever it is that you share. So when you're sharing pictures of you and your friends having a nice dinner, and by the way, raise your hand if you were a fan of roasted broccoli and asparagus over pasta.
Oh.
We've seen many hands between Dan and myself. We even see some hands from little ones on screen. You got to
Yeah.
choose. You got to choose like the right food, the good food, the healthy food in the process. But it's a really, again, a beautiful way of sharing, especially through the illustrations and allowing children to be able to connect with what the feeling is like to be able to enjoy one another's company. We talked as well about the power of reading, and we just wrapped up National Family Literacy Month. I've been seeing some statistics, and things are starting to get better. But during the pandemic, reading levels plummeted nationwide. So, so educators are still doing their part to be able to kind of make up for lost ground, so to speak, because obviously, many children were not physically in school. It was the distance learning, the remote learning you're only able to absorb through osmosis or telekinesis, just a brief amount of what it is that you actually receive. What does it mean to you now knowing that City Under the City is actually helping kids to connect to the power of reading? And as you embark on your 30th year in the Kidlit community, knowing that, the work that you've been putting in, it's not just fallen on deaf ear, that you've actually made an impact and truly, with every fiber of your being, help children and big kids alike to be able to connect with and feel the power of reading. What does that mean to you on a personal and professional level?
Well, it's extremely gratifying, and it's even more gratifying when I make, sort of an in-person connection with someone.
Mm.
Uh, it just, you don't, someone that create, like those of us who create books, most of it is kind of solitary, like this, it's, where there's not a ton of interaction other than maybe with your editor or the art director, but mostly you're, in your studio working away, and you tend to very much focus on the work and the quality of the work, which you should. The quality of the work is always the most important, but you need to go out into the world and see how it's been received. And a lot of times I'll do these books and then I'll do some sort of public appearance or an event or something like that. And it's always amazing to me when someone comes up to me, having read one of my books or having, lived with one of my books for a few years, they'll tell me how it almost has a life of its own in their lives. You send these books out there, you send the shows out there, and you don't really know how it's affecting people, but it's always amazing to me where people, quote the book or use it for something, that I did not intend it for, like whatever that would be. Once a year, we're going to read your book on Christmas Eve or something like that. I am honored to be part of your family tradition. I'm just constantly amazed at that kind of thing that happens. And I'm thrilled, I'm really thrilled that people enjoy the work and they recognize my intention, and then they come up with their own intentions for the work as well, which is very interesting.
I would be remiss if I didn't, for all of those who especially love your illustrated work, Firefighter Flow, which, by the way, that is incredible alliteration. Andrea Zimmerman and our friends and neighbors at Holiday House Books, part of the Big Jobs Bold Women series. We've seen such tremendous strides in women's empowerment. We're seeing more women in political offices. We're seeing more women running companies. I just actually saw, I think it was either the Miami Marlins or the Seattle Mariners. They made this big hire where it was like, I think it was a promotion of a high-ranking woman in office in the organization to an even higher-ranking office in the organization. To be able to share, especially with young girls that want to grow up. A lot of things are shifting where, things that only men can do this. It's now definitely changing. So again, when you think of a firefighter, if you think of the old school way in which we thought it was, this is a man's job, police officer and firefighter and truck driver, and women can't do these kinds of things. That was an illusion. That was not really a true belief with a capital T. Could you share with us, with our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and of course our fellow shining stars here. Actually, which by the way, I have Little Forest. We have these shining stars, which are tried and true as part of the children's book Spotlight series for many years now. Little Forest is actually using this as a teething toy, by the way. So this is why we carry at least 2 shining stars wherever we go. Could you share us a little bit about the Big Jobs Bold Women series, Fire Flow, and what was it like to work with Andrea as part of this project with Holiday House Books?
Well, Andrea and I created a book together years ago, over 20 years ago, called Trashy Town. And at the 20-year anniversary, we did a follow-up finally called Smashy Town. And, it was so much fun. And I love Andrea. She's a wonderful writer. She's a good person. And so we were talking and she said, well, I have another manuscript I can send you. Not part of the Trashy Smashy Town, but she said, I just have this, I just keep thinking of you. So she sent it to me, and it was a manuscript called Fire Joe. And so I read it, and I called her. I said, Andrea, change it to Flow. And so for a while, the title of the book was Fire Flow. But then through this conversation, we created this idea of the series, of the Big Jobs Bold Women series. And so we started talking about, well, how about, if we, do the Firefighter as the initial book, the next book that I just handed the artwork in is titled Crane Jane. So it's this woman who's a crane operator. And
love it.
In the future, there'll be someone who, I think there's a park ranger, a plumber, and a digger operator, and there's more to come. But the basic concept is that these are examples for young girls of occupations, more physically demanding occupations that are not normally thought of. Now, there are a lot of books for girls about being president, being a scientist, being an astronaut. Well, those are fantastic. But I thought, well, an electrician is a really good job. You have to be very intelligent. You have to be strong. You have to make decisions. It's an important job. Same thing with a plumber, and same thing with a park ranger. And these are, jobs that are not necessarily normally thought of for women. And so we had this idea that that's what we're going to do. We're going to explore these different occupations that were, really thought of for men. And that was the exciting part. And so we did this, and then I did some samples, and we presented it to our publisher. And so we're off and running with this. So I'm waiting to hear what the next book in the series will be. But you're always one book ahead. Yes. I just turned this in. So then that'll come out in 23, but I have to find out what we're doing next. That will come out in 24. But it was just so, and again, like I said, I love working with Andrea. She's an old friend. So it's just a joy.
And this is, of course, again, for all of our friends and neighbors, our listeners and viewers, and of course, our fellow shining stars. The Kidlit community tends to plan quite a bit in advance. So it's kind of like, to a certain extent, you're one of the very few people. No, it's kind of like you are a Svengali mixed with a soothsayer. You know what the future looks like. You're talking 2025. There's a part of me that says, can you pass along the California state lottery numbers or the Powerball numbers, because you know what the future looks like as well, too.
Yeah.
As we wind down, I also wanted to touch upon the fact of the great work that you're doing with Doug Unplugged, and it's streaming right now. I remember, because a little known fact for all of our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and our fellow shining stars, before my time at PR from the Heart, I had the blessing of hosting a popular wrestling radio show called Monday Night Mayhem. And I remember the transition that I made from regular radio. We actually had a college station called 91.3 FM WBNY at my alma mater, Buffalo State College. And I decided to make the transition to go to what was then known as internet radio, which of course transformed into podcasts. Now, again, around 2004, 2005, 2006, it was kind of like, why aren't you on real radio? And now it's the question, and the narrative has shifted to why don't you have your own podcast kind of thing. So streaming, we're seeing this with movies. We're seeing this with animated series. Before, it was just a matter of like, when you were thinking of, animated shows, you thought of, or great children's programming, you thought of PBS. And PBS
Yep.
Kids is still doing a wonderful job, but it's the days of just there being Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, Sesame Street, and Barney are long since past us. Could you take us through the experience of working with Apple TV and just really, we talk about the power of reading. If you could talk to us about the power of streaming and really how it's helping especially children's authors who have the desire to be able to transform their book or their books, their series, into an animated series.
There's a lot more opportunity now. I think it's the outlets where you can potentially pitch a show have tripled over the last few years. So there traditionally for kids program, there were 3 cable networks. Over the last few years, it's at least 9 or 10, if not more. Then of course you have access to foreign markets and different things like that. But it's exploded, and they all need content. And but it has to be the right content. And I am fortunate. I have been fortunate enough to work with people who value education and they value reading. And they understand that, this is, we get, us in the, us in the kids book world, as well as the animated series world for kids, we get these kids first. We get them, we try to set them on the right path. We try to inspire them and, introduce good, healthy, positive, strong things into their lives very early on. And I feel like it's an incredible responsibility that we all have to present the best that we can do. And also, you probably don't remember a book that you read about 6 years ago, but you remember the book you read when you were 6 years old. It sticks with you. That's important. That's a responsibility for a creator, to create the best that they can. And I just love being in that position. I enjoy it. It's kind of awesome, to be someone who introduces someone to a concept. That's wild to me. That's kind of amazing that their little synapses are going off in their brains when they're reading your book or they're watching your show. That to me, what a remarkable opportunity that is. So as I said, fortunately, I am working with a lot of really good people who value education and reading and the, sort of the human experience. So it's not just about, let's just get this thing on the air, let's sell toys, things like that. It's not really like that. So I've been very fortunate.
I do have to say this, Dan, is the fact that, for the success that you've achieved, it's very easy. Like in any sort of industry or market, there's ego. There's a lot of healthy ego, but there's a lot of unhealthy ego. And the fact that you take the blessings that have been given to you and really the role of being a caretaker for children, a cultivator and a caretaker for children. You're right. There are some people that could probably just be like, hey, let's get the next series up. Let's cash the next check. Let's make the next toy series, the next merchandising line, because it is a very lucrative industry as well, too. But the fact that you have the heart behind all of that. And this is why I'm just so glad to see things continue to be able to grow and expand, not only for Doug Unplugs, but also for your role and your work as being a children's author and illustrator. As we, of course, conclude each of our children's books Spotlight Series episodes, there are 2 ways that we go about doing that. We, of course, always remember our dear friend and neighbor, the host of the long-running children's television program, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Little tip of the cap to the late Fred Rogers. He reminded us, Dan, in many ways, whether it be through his experiences with us in the neighborhood, on the neighborhood, whether he traveled across the country for a college commencement speech, a talk at a local library. In fact, at the Fred Rogers, now the Fred Rogers Institute, they actually have, I remember when I was there, it was a couple of years ago, I read a copy, they had a transcript of like a talk that he did with the American Library Association from 1991. They literally have everything there. Yep. But he always encouraged us, and he kept the time, whether it be 15 seconds, 30 seconds, or a full minute, to encourage those or to remember those who helped love us into being. And that was his way of communicating with us, to be able to remember those that inspired us, who taught us that it's healthy to think for ourselves, who also helped us to remember to enjoy our own company and to treasure the memories and the moments that we experience and we create with our fellow friends, neighbors, loved ones in the process. I know this is a question that I've asked previously, because now I believe you're a 3-time guest. You're on the Children's Book Spotlight series, but who are some of those individuals that you would like to publicly recognize on episode number 164 of the Children's Book Spotlight series who helped love you, Dan Yaccarino, into the end?
Well, first and foremost, my parents. They encouraged me with my art. They encouraged me. I remember my mom would bring me to the library every week, and I'd get a big stack of books. I'd return a big stack, and I'd get another big stack. And she saw the value in that. She really did. And they both encouraged my art. I went to art school, and they were, eventually okay with that. Not in the beginning, but they were eventually okay. They had faith in me and that was everything. Sort of the confidence they had in me translated into confidence that I had in myself. And I was very fortunate that they were sort of broad thinkers, because I was pretty much the only artist in my family. So it was kind of an odd, I don't come from a long line of painters, sculptors, or anything like that. So I was sort of the first of my kind in my family. And so I was very fortunate that even though it wasn't in their experience, their life experience, they still understood the value of it. And they understood that that was something that was very, very important to me. So definitely both of my parents.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And I always remember, Mr. Rogers said that, no matter who you mention, whether they're near or far, whether they're here with us on this earthly plane or if they're watching us from above in heaven, that they're proud of us, knowing that they made such a positive impact and difference in our lives as well, too. Of course, we also give a little tip of the cap to one of our favorite Disney animated classics, because I really believe that we have the abilities to bring to form and shape, Dan, and you do this in many different ways, shapes, and forms. You help other people just as well as helping yourself to bring goals and dreams and visions and heartfelt desires to life, and to help those come to form and shape. We're custodians of that for those who were in our lives, who were blessed to be of service to, that we love and we care about. So of course we have a little segment, as you well know, we have this trusted genie lamp here at the Children's Book Spotlight series. This is a little segment that we like to call 3 Wishes. So whenever a guest has been on at least more than once, the wishes are for the world, so to speak. So obviously, again, we're very much trucking along in the right direction. At least we feel that, individually and collectively, which is great. But definitely, the world still needs a lot more healing, well wishes, prayers, and positive action. People who are doing great things in the world like yourself. So these 3 wishes that you're being given today, to be able to put those out there for the world, what would those 3 wishes be?
Well, I think first is to sort of heal the division that in every possible aspect of our culture just feels like everything is just so completely divided. And I would just wish that people would come together and see our commonalities rather than our differences. I think we probably have more in common than we have not. And so that would definitely be something that I would wish for. Second wish would be to, and this is a selfish wish, that I could continue to do the work that I do for the rest of my life. I so enjoy it. It's connects. I connect with other people that way. They seem to benefit from it. They seem to enjoy it. So that's my second wish, which is a little bit for me. But I do, so love serving kids, serving families. Just creating conversation. So they become again closer together. So kind of the wishes are pretty connected in a way, in a sort of a broad way, broad view, and then a sort of a more intimate view. And the third one, that's kind of you're really putting me on the spot here, John. I'll tell you what, I wish you continued success, sir. That's my wish.
Oh, well,
I gave you my wish.
You know, that is an unexpected blessing. I received that. And it's interesting because, you know, one of my favorite candle scents, I have here in my office a candle that's entitled Santa's Cookies. It's by the
Ooh.
good people at Yankee Candle, and I'm in the Christmas spirit, and I think that it's important to know the fact that you can receive those unexpected blessings and miracles. And I will just say this, Dan, like being able to, I feel so blessed, and I'm starting to connect with that feeling even more, just being able to connect with people such as yourself and John Para and Rafael Lopez. So again, you know, this has been, you know, such a wonderful past couple of episodes of the Children's Book Spotlight series. We just came off the heels of our special in studio Children's Book Spotlight series episode with Rafael Lopez. Again, the rolling of the R's, we go from Rafael Lopez to Dan Yaccarino. So it really, and just to be able to have you be a part of the extended PR from the Heart family, I always love our trolley stops in the process. So again, we encourage all of you, our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and of course our fellow shining stars, if you haven't had the opportunities to do so, to head on over to Dan's official website, which we have included in the description below. If you are a teacher, principal, librarian, educator, superintendent, all of the above, if you wear many hats, so to speak, and you would like to be able to facilitate a virtual or in-person author school visit with Dan in 2023, you can connect with him again via his official website. In the process, if Amazon is your preferred online vehicle of your choosing, you can leave a 5-star review. One of the many ways that you can pledge your support is by leaving a 5-star review for City Under the City or Firefighter Flow as part of the Big Jobs Bold Women series. Again, courtesy of our friends and neighbors at Mine Edition and Holiday House Books. Some of the many ways that you can pledge your support are very simple. Those 5-star reviews for Dan to let him know that he's doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and those who love great children's books. As we hear the trolley, we know that that means that it is time to go. So raise your hand if you have had fun on episode number 164 of the Children's Book Spotlight series. We got a little force that you're kind of sleeping, so he's raising his paw.
Okay.
And viewers and friends and neighbors and shining stars. And yes, this is actually, I'm super excited because this is the first, you know, if you remember Siskel and Ebert back in the day, right? They're no longer with us, but, you know, Little Forrest likes to show his support by giving 2 paws up for City Under the City, so to speak. So, you know, 2 thumbs up, 2 paws up. Little Forrest really enjoys it. It's interesting. You know that a little furry friend enjoys a children's book when they're licking the pages. I guess that's their way of saying, you know what, I really, really, really like this children's book, John, in the process. There are many more magical trolley stops to come. We have 1 more month left in the month of 2022. And then, of course, we'll be trucking along. The trolley will be meandering along into 2023. But first things first, once again, if these messages that we have shared with you today as part of City Under the City and Firefighter Flow, talking about the importance of enjoying each other's company, being able to think for yourself and be okay with it, be empowered, that's actually such a beautiful gift to be able to reconnect to the power of reading. And even if you just enjoyed Dan's company and my company, and you're now lighting your own Santa's Cookies candle in the process, we encourage you, one of the many ways to pledge your support for PR from the Heart and the Children's Book Spotlight series is by subscribing to PR from the Heart's official YouTube channel and to share this very special trolley stop that you have been enjoying. That is episode number 164 of the Children's Book Spotlight series. If you are a children's author and you would like to share your inspiring story, just like Dan Yaccarino did here this week on the Children's Book Spotlight series, and be a part of the Children's Book Spotlight series as a featured guest in the coming new year 2023, you can head on over to our official website at prfromtheheart.com or connect with us via any of our social media platforms that you now see on screen. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all at PR from the Heart. We, of course, also love to give another tip of the cap. We already mentioned Mr. Rogers a couple of times. Of course, one of his trusted neighbors for many years. We are privileged, proud, and honored to call him a friend and colleague. Each and every month, our dear friend David Newell, who played Mr. McFeely, of course, Speedy Delivery, who was a part of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood for so many years. He has joined us now for, we're approaching the 2-year anniversary of our Neighborly Reviews bookcast at PR from the Heart. So if you are a children's author and would love for myself and David to deliver a new heartfelt review of your new children's book, and of course, if you would like to be able to learn more information on how we can assist you with that, you can head on over to our official website, prfromtheheart.com. And of course, we are setting up game plans and roadmaps for authors all across the country in 2023 at PR from the Heart. So if you are interested in having us help you to facilitate a featured television interview or interviews in a city of your choosing, a book media tour in a city or cities of your choosing, and just again, for more information on how we can be of service to you as we enter 2023 at PR from the Heart, you can head on over to our official website and schedule your courtesy connection call by visiting us either via our official website or on social media at PR from the Heart. One final time, we encourage all of you, as we have thoroughly enjoyed City Under the City, and we will, of course, continue to be enjoying leading into the holiday season and beyond, Firefighter Flow and the rest of the Big Jobs Bold Women series. A little tip of the cap as well, again, to our favorite neighbors at Mine Edition. Again, when I think of Mine Edition, I think of quality children's books, and I think of Tetris. And I never owned a Game Boy back in the day, but I still remember when, you know, the cool kids were the ones that had the Game Boys back in the day. John, do you want to play Tetris? Of course. But then, you know, I could also play it on my my Radio Shack Tandy computer. Again, we're going old school here on the Children's Book Spotlight series. But of course, some of our favorite neighbors at Holiday House Books as well, too. Again, you can head on over to Dan's official website. You can stay connected with him. Post Children's Book Spotlight series through social media. We've included his social media platforms in the description below. And again, if Amazon is your preferred online vehicle of your choosing, you can leave a 5-star review for both City Under the City, Firefighter Flow, any or all of Dan's other authored and or illustrated children's books. Again, that's one of the many ways that you can pledge your support to let him know that he's doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and those who love great children's books. Again, we hear the trolley. We know that that means it's time to go. So, Little Forrest, how are you doing? This was your first children's book spotlight. So, do you want to say any parting shots on your end of things, or just like I think that your love is just emitting through the screen. That's actually more than enough. So again, this is Little Forrest. You will be seeing him in future episodes of the Children's Book Spotlight series at Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. You can tell he's a little tuckered out, and he's been such a cooperative soul here. But again, you know, anytime that it's a Yaccarino size version of the Children's Book Spotlight series, you got to show up. You got to wear your Sunday best, needless to say, in the process. We want to thank all of you for your continued support of PR from the Heart, for your continued support of the Children's Book Spotlight series, for your continued support of children's authors and illustrators around the world, such as Dan Yaccarino, who are doing, again, wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and those who love great children's books, for your continued support of local libraries and children's and independent bookstores, truly the pillars of our community. And all else, we want to thank you for helping us to walk home the children of the world. Lastly, one final tip of the cap, once again, to our favorite neighbor, Mr. Rogers. Yes. He reminded us in different ways, but the power of his message was still universally clear. In his own private numerology, he shared his favorite 3 numbers, 1, 4, 3. And somehow Mr. Rogers met Ponce de Leon, maybe in a past life or something, because Ponce de Leon found the fountain of youth. Mr. Rogers somehow for his entire natural adult life weighed 143 pounds. That was just one of the many ways that he shared I love you, because there's 1 letter in I, 4 letters in love, 3 letters in you. As Little Forrest was kind enough to be able to join us, as Dan was kind enough to join us this week, we remind all of you of our favorite 3 numbers here at the Children's Book Spotlight series in PR from the Heart, and that is 243. There's 2 letters in we, 4 letters in love, 3 letters in you. That is our reminder to you, as a little tip of the cap to Mr. Rogers, that you are loved, that you are special, that you are whole, that you are healthy, that you are complete, that we like you, that we love you just the way that you are in the process. So again, for Little Forrest, for Dan Yaccarino, for myself, John Massalonis, we hope that all of you again had a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday, that you continue to enjoy the holiday season, and we will see all of you once again for another trolley stop here on the Children's Book Spotlight series, which will be episode number 165, once again very soon. Thank you for helping us to walk home the children of the world, our fellow friends, our fellow neighbors, and our fellow shining stars. Goodbye for now. Here we go, Little Forrest. We want to say goodbye. This is the big finish. Yay! Goodbye for now. Yay!